All right, welcome everybody. This is David Lasher of Keen 360, and this is Bootcamp for configuring and administering the Creatio no-code platform. The purpose of these sessions of this bootcamp is to help people understand the foundational skills for administering and configuring the system, and importantly, obtaining certification, formal certification as a Creatio Analyst. Creatio Analyst means kind of a hybrid between a classic business analyst and a developer, configurator, administrator. It's hybrid in the no-code world. And just because it's no code doesn't mean it's no knowledge or no skill, right? And that's why we need bootcamp. It's straightforward. I don't like to say easy. It's straightforward to build and maintain and change applications with Creatio, but there are certain skills that you need for it to become easy for you. Easy things are difficult if you don't know one or two little tricks sometimes. So Bootcamp is here to help you learn those tricks. Our guide, our instructor is going to be Kevin Brady, who is our lead configurator at Keen 360. Kevin currently resides in Alabama. That's where he's sitting. And I'm going to turn it over to him after saying one more thing about Bootcamp and why we're doing a new version of Bootcamp now in the fall of 2023 to update the Bootcamp that we did about 3 years ago, Kevin. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
In previous versions of Creatio. And the fundamental reason is that Creatio has continued to invest in their platform and has brought about numerous great changes that both make it easier to build and maintain applications and increase or expand the capabilities that those applications can provide to the organizations that adopt Creatio, right? So it's both. And so for those who don't know, the new release of Creatio was in September of this year, 2023. And it's version 8.1. And version 8.0 was released a year ago, but with any big change, and this was a massive transformational change for Creatio, there is a lot for the software vendor, the platform vendor, to work out as they move from what they had to what they're now offering. And Creatio was no exception in this respect through most of 2022, well, most of 2023. And frankly, for changes this big, Creatio did a very nice job in making it smooth and addressing issues that popped up. But our Keen 360 perspective is that bugs and problems have been worked out on the platform, and it's time for all Creatio customers to commit to the 8.1 version with the Freedom UI user interface. That's the big change that's most apparent because it's the UI. But there's a lot that's changed in the way that we use the wizards and build the different kinds of views or pages that are in the system. With no further ado, let me hand it over to Kevin.
Okay, so you should be able to see my Creatio screen now.
Yes, we can.
All right. So this is the new shell for Creatio. Creatio calls it the Freedom UI shell, which is the look for your workspaces and your home screens and where your communications are. So I wanted to start with a little bit of a level setting in the UI as to where things are, and then we'll move to the application hub. So right now I am at one of the new home screens that Creatio has that can have different module versions, and you can build them out. I can change by down here which one I want to do. Sales service, studio, and they come up with the some starting metrics when you first log in. There's a little hello Kevin screen that's pulling from my user record. And this background behind as well. You can have these nice colored backgrounds that you can change in user settings. And down the left side of the screen is my workspace with the sections that I've got now with colored icons that I think look really, really fancy. The workspaces still have the options that you can click to at the top. You choose, say, sales, service, and it'll change the list of sections there. So you use workspaces to build a list of relevant sections that a user may need for a certain job is usually the way I try to think about it. So that if somebody's in a certain role, like service, that they work a help desk, they manage cases, they need to work with certain configuration items in the network, like routers and computers and how they all interconnect. You can put those sections that store that data, the cases, configuration items, and services, into the service workspace that then you can give access to a user that does the service work. So they are presented with the sections that are relevant for their day-to-day tasks. The one thing that I want to highlight with workspaces is that there's an option for all apps, so which will show every section that you have permissions to. So if you have access as a user to say the service workspace and the sales workspace, you can change it to service and it'll only show the service sections, but you can also change it to all apps and it will show everything you have access to. And then what you can do, there's this new search bar at the top. So say you're like, I need accounts. You can actually type in the section you're looking for and it'll trim the list. I think is just really handy for getting exactly where you need really fast. If you want to show and hide the section list, you can click this square of boxes up here and it'll go away. Click it again for it to come back. There is the play button up here for running a process that you can have several processes that are like wherever you are in the system, you want to be able to trigger them. Same thing with this plus button, except this is for creating records in the system. So say you want to regardless be able to make a task on the activity calendar, or you need to be able to make a new contact wherever. The new record add is available right here. And this is also something that configurators can trim down the list, say that normal users maybe don't need landing pages. There's the search bar up here, which is your universal search to say that I want to type Kevin, and Creatio will go and find any record in the system that is related to what you typed in that's indexed for search. So right now, because this is a trial I just provisioned, my contact record is the only thing showing up. If I'd made, say, let me try Andrew. So say like I had a contact and then I made some opportunities and some cases, you can see that there's a couple users with Andrew, the name Andrew, that are showing up in the system. So there's actually all results will show me everything with the little icons to differentiate them. But then I can also go down and say like, okay, what were the accounts that were considered relevant? And you'll see here that these three accounts, ACOM, Infocom, and Apex, were all created by contacts with the name Andrew. So Creatio is finding the relevant records in that section. If I were to go down to opportunities, it'll be the same thing. There's an opportunity that has an Andrew in the name. So I'm able to search across the system for records. The Creatio logo up here is kind of like a home button. It will take me back to the home screens that we started at. And then up here on the top right corner is for anybody that used the older shell, where my CTI panel and notifications are. So I can click this cluster of boxes here, which has my feed for posting messages in the system, the kind of chat back and forth in regards to cases. I can post in regards to different records. Sorry. So like if I make a message on an account to say that I'm going to call them this week, or if I'm on an opportunity and say like, completing a certain document, I can put in the feed to say that I did it, like put my little message in. and it'll say that I posted in regards to a record, and then my message. And I can send comments as a user, go back and forth and chat with each other. There's the call panel, which is where CTI is connected to make phone calls from Creatio. This is where I would go to see my call history. I got my emails, which I don't have an inbox set up right now, but I can send new messages, view my incoming, processed and not processed emails. And then this last one down here, chats, is for showing messages connected. Say we integrated Creatio with the example worker here is with Facebook Messenger for a support line. Like that somebody come to your Facebook page and say, "Hey, I'm having trouble with whatever. Like this one's a password reset." Those chats would show up here. Right next to it is the system messages, where you would get your business process notifications if, say, there's a task that you need to be done, which is down here, that maybe an opportunity you're on it has advanced and needs a document created, and you're assigned to be the user to do that task. That'll show up in your business process tasks to say, "Hey, you need to do this." This little I here is system messages. Mostly that's going to come up for more of a configurator, not as much a regular user, but system messages will show you if you ran deduplication on a contact to say that these contacts were duplicates and I want to merge them. Creatio will do the process behind the scenes, and then an alert will show up under system messages to say, "Hey, those records were merged successfully." If you do a data import, it'll also show up here to say that it could, you had 50 rows in your Excel sheet that were loaded. It'll tell you X out of 50 were loaded. If it didn't, for whatever reason, get all of them, it said 45 out of 50, and then you can open the import log to see why those 5 didn't go in. The little present one is for birthdays in the system or noteworthy events. This box with a check mark is approvals, where you can see approvals that were generated that need your attention. Say that there's an invoice here that I'm supposed to look at. I'm in charge of approving it. I can either use the actions here to approve, reject, or reassign to somebody else and say, "Actually, I want David to approve it." I can also click the link here for the invoice, and it will actually take me to the record in the system so that I can review the information I'm approving before I approve it. Above that is feed notifications, this little chat with the bell on it. That is for if somebody responds to a post that you made. Like if they like your message, they comment on your message, they tag you in a message, anything that like you think normally like in a group chat that someone like in social media, like that you would get an alert for, it's kind of like that. And this clock at the top is for reminders. So some records in the systems, like invoices and activities, if you do like tasks, can have a remind user on, and then you can set a date. You can actually see it down here for this invoice. When it is time for that date, the reminder will show up here to say, you need to circle back to this record. So then there's the little circle with the question mark that's for going to the Creatio Academy and looking for help, or if you have support looking at a ticket, you can grant access so that they can try to diagnose the problem. I'm going to skip this gear for a second at the top, and I'm just going to click the little picture of me, which is where I can either log out or I can view my profile and make any user changes that I might need to do for, say, like my time zones. My time zone's not right. And say, since I'm in Alabama, I need Central Time. And so I can change it. And that way, Creatio will adjust my time zone. That.
Kevin, while you're dealing with that little hiccup, David here again, and I wanted to emphasize that the way we're starting here is giving you some basics of the layout, and we will be building as we go along into more and more of the configuration itself of how we brought this about. And Kevin, we've got the home page here, right? We
Yep.
start with the home page because this is where users log in, and we need to know what's here before we start learning how to configure it. And we saw what's called a record page or page view. Is that correct, Kevin?
We did look at the invoice page view, yes.
And this is important for newcomers to Creatio to know. So we've got homepage is one way of presenting or rendering information to system users. We've got the record page, which is one record of any type. We see a lot on the left. By the way, those on the left from accounts down to dashboards is what I see. I call those business objects. Creatio calls those sections. It's important to know the Creatio language if we're going for Creatio certification and configuring the Creatio system. Other key types of views, Kevin, are going to be list views. We're going to learn what they are and how to configure them, which is new under the Freedom UI. And then maybe at the end, we will be spending some time on portal views, but that is not going to be a priority of this boot camp. It does bear mention that this summer and fall with the new 8.1 release, Creatio has done a lot of really terrific work in overhauling the way that what you can build with portal pages and the way that those portal pages are priced. So we'll cover that towards the end, but it's not going to be a main emphasis at the outset. So Kevin, I was just wanted to chime in with some context, and I also wanted to encourage some of our more advanced users from who are friends of Keen 360. I see Francine has joined us and Eric has joined us. If they want to chime in with comments about what they like about different aspects of what Kevin's presenting, or want to ask him questions, please do. So back to you, Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I should look at a section before we move to the application hub. So yeah, I've clicked right here on contacts, which is the section for recording people. Creatio's word for people records is contacts. And so this right here that we're looking at is the list view for contacts, where I can see the list of all of the contacts that are in Creatio, or at least in my Creatio instance. Now, I've got some columns that come preset up across the top, the full name, type, account, mobile phone, all visible right here. If I wanted to say adjust some of the values, like maybe I want to see more email, I can pull there's the little bar here. If I hover over the column, that I can grow and shrink that column. If I want to say reorder some of these that are visible, I can actually drag mobile phone and move it up and rearrange those columns that are here. I could also hide the column if I don't want to see it anymore. Maybe it's of no use to me, so I can remove it from the view. And then also there's one option under here with properties that's freeze that I want to show, that with the Freedom UI, you can actually scroll the column setup. And so there's not too many here to really illustrate it. So let me add a couple columns by putting in, say, let's put city, and I've got country there. Just think of, let's go state. Add a couple columns. And then you may be able to see, but my scroll bar got a little longer. So I can actually move over now, and these columns are added. And then I can move, say, city. I'll just reorganize do city, state, country. And now that the columns are a little longer, you can see that I can scroll it like it's in Excel. It just could go longer, as long as I want. If I wanted to really build it out, I can. For configuring for a user to create like a default view, I think it's important to consider the amount of data that you present to them. But from an individual user view, once they're in their login and they want to set up the view that's useful to them, they can make it as long as they want. Yeah. And then if you do freeze, you'll see the full name is actually frozen so that it remains visible regardless of how far I scroll. And so up here in the top left, there are still folders, so I can click the folder button, and there are a bunch of folders or predefined filters for contacts so that I can have, as I need them for repeat use, the folder to say I want to see all contacts of type employee. I can favorite them with the little star here. There's this little kind of like pipeline filter looking view that's what I click to go to adjust the settings to say that this folder is for contacts of type employee. And this is one of those first chances to see where, as David was talking about, this filter setup shows up everywhere in Creatio. It's even more standardized to be the same. Like you're going to see this kind of viewer. It's add condition, and like anytime Creatio says set up a filter, it's going to look like this. And so it's very important to know how to build these as you go. And we could spend the whole all our time today talking about it, but the important thing to do is to practice it, because once you get it in your brain, the more you can set it up in different places. Yeah, but the ability to pick which criteria you want to do of, say, I want to add a condition of, say, birth date, where birth date is equal to today, and then you can have and or ors. Like if you're preparing for certification, I highly recommend go on Creatio's website, get a trial of your own, and play around with it. Just build these. But now I'm going to close that. Yeah, there is options as well down here to do setup access rights. You just click these three dots next to the folder. Yeah. Let me just close that. Before I go to show a record view, I do want to look that there is the new button up here. There's import for if you're doing import from Excel or you're working with landing pages. And then there's also the export to Excel button up here under these three dots. You can also search records. So it's the same thing as we looked at the global search, but you can start typing, and Creatio will try to apply to a text view or to different fields in this. If I click the little filter here, you can see some of the columns it's considering. I can search by all, or I can specify that I want to search within city. But I can filter my list. There's also a refresh wheel, so I can refresh the data, get up-to-date information from Creatio. Good, call the server. But then I can open Andrew Baker's record. So the page will come up, and oh, there you go. I'm going to take a look at that before tomorrow's. But all right, so here is the contact edit page view. This is with a record view for, whereas the list was all contacts in the system, the record view is for one and only one contact. Across the top, I have different tabs for grouping sets of data. I can record addresses and job experience here. I apologize for what's up with my instance. I'm not sure why this trial is giving me so much trouble.
It's inevitable in situations like this, right, Kevin?
Yep. Try to go back to the section list to see if accounts gives me the same problem. Let's look at ACOM. All right, that seems to be better. All right, so across the top, I've got tabs where I can group related sets of data. You can see that like service has cases under it. I can see details of related records that are associated with the edit page I'm on. So that these are, in this case, the cases that are connected to ACOM, service agreements that are connected with ACOM. And if I go to sales, I'll see recommended products, opportunities, invoices, same idea, showing the related records. I got a little business card on this left side where I can see key profile information. I can add a little picture here. And largely this shouldn't look too different for anybody that's familiar with the older UI. The new tools are very much built on the structure of how, like, the new pages are built to be similar to the old, so they look familiar. Okay. I think some of the components in here that I just want to cover before we move on to look at some of the building. The tags are up here in the top left, so you can tag individual records. Your feed and attachments are included here in as a fold-out bar. So you click it, and then this element will appear on the right side of the page. And as we're going through this, the thing I just want you to remember is that there's a lot of components now that are within our use. The thing that I'm really excited about with the Freedom UI is rather than the pages being very templated and you can really just drag fields to like the business card's there regardless, and you just put fields on the business card. You can actually choose, I want one business card, maybe two business cards with the contact, or maybe I want a third one down at the bottom for something that seems relevant as well. Those pieces are a lot more within our control. And so I'll look at the edit wizard. Let's move to how do you make some of these changes. In the Freedom UI, you actually edit the two pages individually, whereas in the old classic UI, you would have a button and you'd say like open section wizard, and then you would see a screen that says like you're in accounts, and then you would have an edit page at the bottom that's more like a configurator's hub for changing accounts. In the Freedom UI, you actually pick the page you want to change. So like in this case, accounts edit page, and then there's this gear in the top right, which will open a new tab, and I make changes to the account edit page. It's a second to load, but we can take a look at the new tools. All right, so now we're in our page editor, and the page looked pretty similar to the record page we were just looking at. We got all our elements still around here. The Freedom UI designer actually did a really good job of making visual a lot closer to what the page is going to look like. Like my feed and attachments toggle is up here, and I can actually click the feed, and it'll go away just as it would in the regular edit page. But in the middle, here's my page view. Got the same tabs, fields, just like we were looking at. And on the left side is essentially my toolbox, where I've got all of the pieces that I can use on page building. And so there are a lot of elements here, a lot more than just what was fields or new fields and then maybe a dashboard. But so we're going to go through how each of these works. At the top here where it says account, this is my page source. So the accounts is built, or like the accounts edit page lets you modify accounts. And so the page source is accounts, the account object in Creatio. Underneath, I can add new fields or I can pick existing fields. That's not too different from the old page. But if I want to add, say, a number, I just drag onto the page, and you can see how as I drag this around, Creatio is trying to add it to different places. And I think this is the biggest thing where it's going to take some adjustment. That there are a lot of potential controls now for modifying the UI. You don't have to really play with them. These, when we get to the application hub, I'll show you that these form pages and list pages are pretty templated. You can say you want a new one. It'll give you a form page, and it'll look like a blank version of this. Like the tabs won't be the same and the fields won't be on it, but Creatio will set up for you the tags on the top, your feed and attachments, the save, cancel, close. That comes as is, and if you don't want to mess with it, you don't have to mess with it. But there's a lot of power that you have now that if you have, say, like a button that you want to put in, you can. There's UI elements we can look at to insert wherever we want buttons. But so let me put in my number, and on the right side, when I clicked on an element, is the settings for set element. You can see it says number 1 at the top, matching the number 1 on the field I just created. And you can give it a name. You can give it a code value. So that's for where the title up here is my reference. That's like user-friendly reference that I can keep track of. This code is for Creatio's reference in the table. That where when it builds any instructions that it needs to know that as to where to send data, where to store data, it's going to use the code. And so once you've saved this field, and then say I type in example number field, you can't come back and change the code. Otherwise, it'll cause problems. Because if you change the code, that's like you're changing an address on Creatio and it's auto forwarding mail to someplace. And if you change the address, it's not going to know where to send it. Under this format here, I can change within the bounds of the kind of field. So there's some groupings going on now that before in the old UI for reference, there was an integer field and then a decimal field. It's now number field, and then you could choose what kind of number. So you can say, like, I want an integer with no decimal. I want decimal with 1 place, and decimal with 2 places, or I want to do a currency field, which can have reference for like it's dollars or euros or currency. I can add a description for the field. Underneath, I can choose whether or not it's required. Some of these should be familiar to people that have used the classic UI builder. Do I want it to be read-only? Should I copy this value when copying records? Which means that if, say, I were to go to a given account, say I want to make a record that's similar, but I want to change a couple things and I want to copy it. Whether this box is checked in will determine if this field is considered one to duplicate. Otherwise, it'll come in blank. So with the new options as well here, I can control the visibility by default. So say on initial page load, I want to hide this field. And then maybe I'll build a business rule to determine when I should show it. Or I want it to be visible by default. I can control the title position. So say I want it to be on the left of the field value, or like my little like box where I type the number. I can let Creatio adjust depending on the page width with auto. I can manually say I want it above, or I can say that I want it hidden. And integer, it's not really going to be that handy to do that, but you can have some options that are hidden. Maybe you want to use a different UI element to indicate what should go there. It's probably not something you'll use very frequently, but it's there to experiment with. I can control the title on the page, which is handy for where my title up here, I may include a longer value for reference at the database level as to what the field is. The say like I need like account banking account number, like for a banking account. That at the database level, I may want to give it a really long name so that when I'm doing debugging, I know what it is. But from a user aspect, if they've opened the account and then they're on a banking tab, maybe including account banking account number as in addition to just being kind of garbled and long, would be confusing to them. So I could set a title on the page that would just be maybe like account number, because they could use context clues if I'm on an account record and I'm on the banking tab to realize what you mean with account number. I can include a tooltip in here, and then down here for some more advanced reference is connections to the object structure of the account, which we don't really need to look too much at right now. So that is that new field. That's adding a new field. And there's several options in here. A couple of the ones that I want to highlight before we move on. Like there's text and date, but there's also options for web link that whereas before you in Creatio you may had to do a text field for a URL, but it wasn't like a live clickable link. You can actually add a web link and it will behave like a link. You can have a color picker, a little like box to pick a color. I have not found a ton of uses for it yet, but it's available. Same thing with image. If you wanted to say have like maybe build like account and contacts used to come out of the box with pictures, but maybe you want to have another record for like a logo or something, like maybe an icon for something. And then the one I'm really excited about is there's auto numbering. So before, if I wanted to set up an auto numbered field to do something like opd123 so that we could do email matching, I had to go into objects and make changes. But now I could just drag in auto number. There's a checkbox here that says auto number. And then I just put in what the prefix is. And so I could say that I want the prefix to be ACCT for account, and then a dash. And then I just specify the number of digits so that like whether it's going to be 00001. And then I save it. And Creatio will do auto number generation. That's it. That's all I have to do. So that's the fields in the editor. And I'm looking at our time. I see we're we got like 10 minutes till the top of the hour. But these are all like this is a lot of the crux of the power and the freedom UI, and I want to make sure we spend the time on it because this is where you're really going to get the page flexibility. I can use page parameters on here if, say, I wanted to pass more information into a given page. Not as useful on an account, at least as of yet, that I've had a use case for, but this page designer is across all pages that you'll build. So like if you, for anybody that has worked in Creatio, if you're thinking of the pre-configured page business process element, which we'll look at more in detail when we get to business processes, but this designer will also be used for that. Yeah. Other thing you could do is easily embed charts. So say I want to do a chart element, I could say I want a spline chart. It'll get dragged in here as a blank block with this little like gray icon. But then my settings on the right will change to do set up chart, and then I click chart settings. And this is where I actually get my screen for building a dashboard element. That if you've built any charts in Creatio on dashboards, it should look familiar. That I can come in here and I can pick the object I want. So say, I want to do cases. And I want to group my cases. I'll just do a count of cases. Let's do it by registration date. So like, how do I want to group the data and what kind of chart, like cases by what value? Do like month and year. And then my element gets added right away, and I can start to see what it should look like. Say, do account cases by month. I can change how I want this to look in the element. I can pick colors. So let's say I want it to be blue instead across the top. There is a chart style. So right now I've got fully colored, which is this like tab at the top option. And it'll display slightly differently with metrics and stuff, which is another reason why you should play around in the trial and get familiar with it. But I can do like plain colored, where it'll just have text at the top, but the text will abide by my chart color. I can do a partially colored, where I'll have the text and then this little colored bar at the top. Or I could do glass effect, which is the setting that is on those homepage screens that we were looking at when we first started. I don't really use these on like section records, because the glass is kind of meant for seeing that nice desktop picture behind you. And so I usually tend to not use it there, but the option is available to you. Yeah, I could do my axes, number of. No, that's why. This is why I need more coffee. Yeah, there we go. Number of cases. You can save it and add it to the page. If, say, I want to reorganize some elements, maybe I realized, oh, I don't want this here. I want to move it around. Yeah, I can actually drag it up to the top here. I could, as I was saying, put it wherever I want. I can just, some of this will take a little getting used to on exactly how to get these pieces to move, but you can put the dashboards wherever. You can put wherever you want. And the thing that for anybody that uses the classic UI, that is one of those tiny changes, but is very handy to know about when you're building in these. If you've dragged a field to a field group, you can just drag it to the profile. You don't have to pull it from the model attributes on the left side. Let's see. So I've got communication options built in here. What else do we have? So we looked at charts. Some of the other things, components. Components is for UI pieces, like some of these structures. So like the components, for example, has a list. It's got tabs. Oh, tabs under layout. So components is, I misspoke. Components is for pieces that go in the UI structure that do a certain function. So like progress bar is what will give you the dynamic case bar that you would normally have on a standard section. You can drag in a communication options group, which is actually what this is right here with the phone, email address, and web link. Similar structure on that. You can have things like folders. You can put buttons wherever you want. So say, like before, you would have to have a button within the run process dropdown. Now you can put a button in UI groupings wherever it makes sense. So like if it's in regards to, say, addresses, that you have a certain business process that you want to run about addresses, you can put it next to addresses rather than like all the way up at the top of your page. what other is key? Like, you're really just going to want to play with these. There's a lot that I could spend all 8 sessions talking about these. And some of these we can revisit as we cover stuff like buttons. When we do business processes, we'll circle back how to connect a button to a business process. But I just want to give you the idea of what's here, like feed messages that you were looking at, that we can embed them in pages, the timeline of records associated with this account. And then down here, layout elements is where you get these things like tabs. So you can put in that you want a new set of tabs. And you can control what the tab is called and what each one is. Say that I want the first tab to be example 1. I can actually choose to do, now if I toggle on an icon, I could say that I want it to be, have like a little person icon, or maybe I want a home button or home icon, something that can help to further illustrate what we're looking at. And then I can also, if it makes sense for my UI, I can change this icon position, where the left one here is icon, and then there's a little gray bar here to indicate the title. I can change it to just the icon. It's another one that I'd suggest using with some caution, because you don't want to confuse your users, but the option is there if it makes sense. The ones you'll probably be using most are these areas and columns. Yeah, you can see that like there's like column, 2 columns, 3 columns. The way these work is, so an area will be like a block of the kind of like that white background. So that's where if you want to say build a business card, you can. And then the columns will be how you define where fields can go, to say like they go in 4 columns across here. So that's the page designer. Yeah. I think that's what I got. Is there any questions that I should go over before we can look at the application hub before we wrap up?
All right.
No?
On to the application hub.
All right. So that's all how you can make changes to existing pages. But say you want to build some new pages and some new sections, because I'm sure you're going to have some new functionality you want to add as well. So back up here to this right corner, there is this settings gear, which will take me to the system designer, where I've got the window to all my tools, the process library for looking at business processes, roles, users that we'll look at when we get to permissions. But the important one we want, if we scroll down here under application management, is this application hub. And if I click on it, Creatio is going to open the management screen for all of the organized applications, is what they're calling them. And an application groups one or more package that contains a specific set of functionality. And big focus the Creatio has had with this redesign and rebuild of the tools has been decomposition and having an application that's targeted towards a certain functionality so that you can group it. And I can show you more once it shows up. We go. So I get my application hub, and just kind of to show you what I'm talking about with that decomposition, you can see here that there's different colored boxes or apps for a certain chunk of functionality. Like there's an app for service and for sales. Productivity has the activities calendar and tasks. And customer 360 over here, that's what has accounts and contacts. So if you need to make changes in your instance to some of these, you can open up a given app. Let's look at customer 360. And you can see there's these new groupings for essentially pieces that come to, when put together, make the app. So There's pages, which are all of the Freedom UI pages that are considered related. Navigations and sections will include the list of any relevant sections. So in this case, with Customer 360, it's got the accounts and contacts. Under data models will include objects beyond just the sections that are relevant. So there's the basic account and contact objects, but then contact type, contact address, any kind of object in the system that stores data. That when you store a drop-down value, it goes into an object, like account type, the drop-down of account types.
Kevin, I think this is a good place to introduce the metaphor of parent items and child items and grandchild items. The idea here for organizational concept is that the contact of the account would both be parents, and then something like category of account or account type, those would be children of the account, child data objects within the data model. So anytime that you have a parent item, I can't think of any exceptions, there probably are some, but you can have one or more, you can have many of the children underneath the parent, and then if there were grandchildren, that doesn't happen very often, but multiple grandchildren items under the child item as well. So that's kind of what we're seeing here, though it's not represented in any kind of hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right, go ahead, Kevin. Thank you.
And then just with the objects here, if you need to make a new one, you can click the new data model object, replacing object, which we can talk about more in detail. But if you need to make changes or you need to view more detail about it, you can click on any of these elements and it will open a further page, which this is the configuration screen for an object. And I don't want to get too into it today, but just so that you know that it's there. Business processes, which we'll look at when we get to business processes, but they will all show up here under the business processes grouping. If you did any web service integrations, like you did a connection with a currency converter to get the up-to-date exchange rates, those would show up here. And then usually you shouldn't need to get too into this, but configuration for the certification, you should know. This is where you can get down to more of a deeper system level as to the pieces that are included in this application. All of these other elements are meant more for a nicer user-friendly role of I want to make changes to the page, but there's things like data bindings and page schemas that we'll look at later, but you can view them all down here in advanced settings. So let's look at if you want to make a new one real quick. So I'm going to click new application, and there's a couple options. I can do a start with that. I want to do stuff with records and business processes, and Creatio will start templating pages. If I use that, I can go to the marketplace and download a new application. There's this option here for AI generated where I can give Creatio a little like a description as to what I want to build, and it will try to get started with data models. I can say this application is focused on dashboards, and it'll template a couple dashboard pages. If you need to install one of the standard applications like Customer 360, these are, you click these, it'll take you to the marketplace page for them. And then if you are installing a file that you downloaded from the marketplace, you would click install from file here and then pick from your hard drive. Usually when I'm building, I like to go with the custom, just go from scratch. I don't want Creatio to give me anything to start with. That's just my personal preference. I think if you're practicing, you can go with records and business processes. But for now, I'm going to go custom. And Creatio is going to ask me, what's the application named? I'm just going to call it, let's call it Bootcamp. And then as a configurator, I also want to check this advanced parameters just to, Creatio will take my name to build that code value I was talking about. So the Creatio knows where data is. It will try to generate it for me. And it's not always perfect, and so I usually just like to make sure that it has not concatenated something unreadable. But so that's there. It looks like it's done okay with Bootcamp. I could choose what color I want it to display as in the hub. I like the blue, so I'm going to leave it as that. And then I can pick an icon for it. And so I'm going to do this little like kind of box with the handle and the pencil, I think. And then Creatio is going to build the structure I need. So now I've got my new app with the same UI setup that we had, but now there's nothing in it since it's fresh. I don't even have any pages. Which I think we could start building in tomorrow. Unless you want me to keep going, David.
I think we're aiming for 60 to 70 minutes for each session, and this seems like a good break point. So we'll pick up here. We started today with seeing what can be built with the no-code tools in Creatio. And then Kevin gave us a real nice overview of how to build pages and use the new application hub. So that was our planned agenda. Kevin and I would like to make sure that the live audience has a chance to ask any questions they might still have at this point. Specific questions, general questions. All right, Francine.
Hi, David. Hi, Kevin. Thanks so much for that introduction, Kevin. I did have a question about the calendar component for a record view page. Is there a way to like can you choose which calendar that's displaying? Or will it just show like all of your calendar elements in Creatio?
So you mean the page designer?
Yeah, there's
This
a
one?
calendar element.
Yeah, so I'll show you. The way this works, if I drag it onto the page, is I choose what object I want to pull from.
Okay.
So like the obvious base one is I can do activity. But really all you need is an object that has a start and end date. So if I pick activity, then there's the start column, and I need a start date, a due date, and then the like a display field. Creatio, because activities is meant for this, it knows
Okay.
what
Oh,
fields.
and you can filter it. That's awesome. Okay.
Yep. So you can put in a static filter that would be like, I only want to see the activities that are incomplete, or I only want to see the stuff this month that you want to hard code essentially to the table.
Maybe only activities that have a certain tag on them, possibly
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And then there's also this page data, which is where you do what would be the detail setup. So I can say like from the account ID equals to the account field on activity that's meant to do this kind of collection. And then I can do secondary title views to say that if I want to have like a little description of what the activity is, or if I want like a type displayed, things like that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Definitely going to use that in the future.
Oh, I'm so excited for it.
Yeah. I have like 2 use cases in mind right off the bat. Thank you.
Other questions? No? Well, we will be having subsequent sessions, so questions can be asked in those sessions as well. I think having no questions, Kevin, we'll call this session a wrap. Do you agree?
All right. Sounds good to me.